this. Every man and every woman has feminine energy. 50%, 50%, equal amounts of soul and spirit. It's your soul and spirit that is the electromagnetic life force. Electricity, masculine, magnetism, feminine. The electromagnetic energy of anyone who's alive, that means they have a soul and spirit. And without a soul and spirit, the body is just a dead carcass. It's just this innate, inert piece of flesh. But it's the soul and spirit that gives it aliveness. And it's our soul and spirit. And it's the feminine energy within all men and women that is in a crisis in our world. A crisis of human dignity, a crisis of vision, of where are we going in the future, a crisis of struggle and pain. Our world was never meant to be this painful. And tonight you're going to understand how to heal some of this pain within yourself. So let's go into what is it within every man and every woman that is feminine energy, feminine consciousness. The first quality and characteristic of feminine energy is imagination. Now, regardless of your gender, everyone who's physical has an imagination. It is the common sense. Now, what do I mean by common sense? Well, we have 5 physical senses, right? Sight, smell, touch, taste, hearing. But the sight, you know people who are blind, you know people who are deaf. You know people that can't touch or taste because of a neurological damage. But the other senses kind of come alive to try to make up for the lack of the one that's damaged or incapacitated at some level. Well, the common sense is imagination. Because everyone, regardless of who you are, you have an imagination. You can't damage it. You can't destroy it. You can ignore it. You can devalue it. You can turn your back on it. You can say things like, it's just your imagination. It has no value. It is worthless. But it is, think about this, your imagination is the birthplace of all that ever was made physical in this physical world. The imagination is where it had to come from. From the room that you occupy, to the clothing that you're wearing, to the computer or the device that you're watching this class on. Where did it come from? It had to start with somebody imagining it. And yet, we're taught in school to stop daydreaming, don't be imaginative, pay attention, learn, physically figure things out by paying attention and reading the books and doing everything that you're supposed to do through those 5 physical senses. But it's the imagination that's the common sense. So that's the first component of feminine energy. And its counterpart, the masculine counterpart that works together with imagination, is willpower. The willpower and imagination work together. Now, because of the chauvinistic society, we tend to elevate willpower, just go out and do it, just take action, just go do, act. Don't imagine, don't spend time thinking about the end results. Don't focus on what you want and the outcome you want to have happen. Because of our conditioning and upbringing, because of the chauvinism, because it is so blatantly blinding to every human being because of the way and the world in which we live and we're brought up in. But when you can start to value and see the value of your imagination, it is your self-image. See? Think about this. You hear the word self-image. Oh yeah, my self-image. I won't really lose weight until I can change the image of myself in my mind to maintain that weight, right? Hypnotherapists talk about that. Change experts, psychologists, they know about the image, your self-image. If you have an image of yourself as being a loser, it's going to be really hard to succeed in life. But what is your self-image? Your image is the way you imagine yourself. The way you imagine yourself. So, that's the first component, the imagination of the feminine energy and the willpower of the masculine energy. Now, out of imagination, there's other abilities that come forward here. The ability to conceive something brand new, which comes from the imagination, to dream up, to be innovative, to conceive something different that has never been part of this physical world is a feminine energy. And to perceive it, to bring it into perspective, is a masculine trait. So conception, perception, imagination, and will are the foundation of masculine and feminine energy. And then out of the feminine energy is passion. Passion is feminine. Passion is that which seeks to become one. If you are passionate with music, and you know a musician who truly has embraced their passion, they become one with that instrument. They become one with the piano. They become one with their saxophone. They become one with music. And guess what? In that oneness, in that passion, they lose sense of time and space. Passion is that which seeks to become one. And ultimately, hear this, your soul is passion. Your soul's passion is to come home. Your soul's passion is to become one with your spirit and to finally come home to God, Goddess, all that is. To fulfill your destiny. That's your soul's passion. But meanwhile, on planet Earth, you have other passions to explore that are a part of your destiny. Some people have a passion for drawing or painting, or a passion for communicating and teaching, which is one of my passions. And when I teach and when I'm in that flow, I'm connected to my soul and spirit, and time and space disappears, and it brings me such joy in the living of my life. Passion. Now, what's the masculine component to passion? And this is going to surprise a lot of you. It's compassion. What? How can masculine energy compassion? Yeah, compassion is a dynamic force of caring. It is a kind of caring, a special kind of caring that heals. So, passion and compassion, imagination and will, the feminine energy is so important. To start to value these traits and qualities and characteristics are, guess what? The way you feed your soul, the way you strengthen your soul and your inner power, your genuine inner power, not your ego's version of power, because tonight's topic is about solutions for moving beyond struggle, to learn how to tap into your own inner power and strength. So inner power is your ability to take action. It is the potential, it is the dreaming, it is the passion, it is all of the components that I'm going over right now are energies of passion and strength. The passion, or rather the energies of power and strength. Passion is one of those powers, and compassion is a strength that emerges from your passion. Passion, compassion. So then what's the next component? Creativity is feminine. You know, women have the power to give birth to a whole new being. Women, feminine energy on that physical level can give birth. It also needs the seed of the masculine in order to do that. There's the codependent relationship between soul and spirit, between the masculine and the feminine on the anima and animus. But when you understand that creativity is a feminine energy, and again, in our world, it's sorely lacking, and it's in crisis, actually. People repeat and recreate the same old thing they've already created. They change names, and look at Hollywood and all the movies. I mean, come on, there's very rarely a fresh new story in Hollywood. And when it does come out, everybody flocks to it because it's not the same story dressed up, different characters, a different time frame, but it's the same story. So creativity and its component, here's this so important for you artists out there who have a lot tapped into your feminine energy of creativity, but can't seem to bring your art into the world, can't seem to make it productive. Productivity is the balance of creativity. To be creative and productive is where you create balance in your life, and you can not only produce fun and creative ideas, but you can produce it to a point where you can support yourself. You're not the struggling artist. You know, there's this romantic notion that in order to be an artist, you have to struggle and suffer. And then finally, maybe one day, long after you're gone, your work will be appreciated by humankind. Well, you know, that's not a really fun life to live, I wouldn't think. But more importantly, the missing ingredient is often too much feminine energy and not enough masculine energy to support their work. They're looking for someone to support them, looking for someone to make up for their own masculine energy. So creativity, productivity, passion, compassion, imagination, willpower. These are the three, so far, components that not only are your feminine and masculine energy, regardless of your gender, but they are the link and bridge to your soul and your spirit, and to your power and your strength. Power is an ability. Power is a feminine energy. When you take that power, when you have that creativity and you bring it into productivity, you take action upon it. When you bring action into it, that power then becomes a strength. It becomes a strength. So power is feminine, strength is masculine. And each of us have this wellspring within us. I call it the forgotten power and strength. And so many people are searching and seeking for answers outside of themselves, but it's always been within you. And it's something that you can learn to tap into. And I'm going to teach you just how to do that this evening. So we got the God Goddess, the soul and the spirit, the anima, animus, the feminine energy of imagination, the feminine energy of passion, creativity. And what is the fourth component? Feelings. Ah, yeah, that thing that you run from your entire life, emotion. Because we've been taught and conditioned that it's bad and wrong and emotions are all. But emotion is another form of your power, to be emotional. And what do we say in society? Why isn't the President of the United States a female? Because feminine energy is seen as weak. Being emotional is seen as a weakness, and it's not. It's a strength. It's a power, rather. And when the component of the feeling is thinking, the masculine energy, to think and to feel. And when you bring your thoughts and feelings together, that's called emotion. Emotion contains, every emotion has a thought and a feeling contained. A thought of being in jeopardy, a thought of being threatened produces fear. A feeling of fear, of anxiety, of tightness. But it's the emotional container of fear. So there is these 4 levels, and I'm going to continue talking about this because I think it can be very valuable for all of you and any of you listening to really just expand this potential and then to start to value what you haven't been valuing so that you can feed your soul and strengthen it so that you can have that resource to create elegance and ease in your life, to move beyond struggle. And that's what I coach people and work people for over 25 years on finding this solution within themselves. Now, so we have this beautiful energy, don't we? We have this energy of feeling and thinking. And again, in our world, we've been taught and conditioned, just think, just figure it out, just rationalize, be logical, be reasonable, just figure it out, just think, ignore, do everything to ignore and deny your feelings. But guess what? You cannot. The feminine energy, the goddess, will not be denied. So, let's get back to these components. So we got imagination and willpower. These are the feminine over here, connecting you to soul. These are the masculine, connecting you to spirit. Imagination with its passion, creativity, and feelings. Masculine energy of willpower, of compassion, productivity, and thinking. And it's important to think. It's important to think. And we live in a world where very few people actually think for themselves. I know people say, oh no, I'm always thinking, I'm always running. No, you're regurgitating the past. You're remembering and you're fearing, you're doing all kinds of things, but you're not originally, freshly thinking without being connected to your feelings. Every thought has a feeling connected to it. And that's what emotion is, thought and feeling. And it's the emotion that gives the thought power. And that's why some of you, have you ever done affirmations? I love affirmations. I teach it. I teach it in a very specific way. Maybe I'll do a class on here about affirmations down the road. But right now, I don't have time to go into it. But more importantly, people will say, oh yeah, I had a student one time come up from a class that I did about 3 years ago. And she was so dead inside. I hate to say it that way. But she just had no emotional expression. And I felt so much for her. She came up to me, she goes, Michaiel, I love your class and I really got a lot from it, but I've been saying affirmations for years and I say it every morning. I look in the mirror and I say, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself. And nothing's changing. I'm like, well, that's a thought without feeling. You got to feel some juice. You got to feel the love, not just say the words like describing something. You got to feel it. And I helped her through all that, but my point is that we do that. We think, well, I can say the words, I can write my affirmations down, but are you feeling it? Are you feeling the success that you want to feel, the end result of what you want to create? So much of the law of attraction is create the emotion, the feeling now. That's what draws, and like a magnet draws it into your reality. But most people say, well, how can I feel abundant when I don't have enough money in the bank? You can generate it. You're a powerful creator. You can remember a time when you were abundant or whatever. So my point is, thought and feeling is the next level. And I think I should probably leave it there. I could go on to some other things. I'll talk about another one. Intuition is feminine. Mother's intuition, right? Feminine energy, intuition. Logic and reason is masculine. And you need both, especially now in our world, to get through life. You need a solid connection and understanding of your intuition. And when you do, and when you can listen and value your intuition as much as logic and reason, intuition is a knowingness without certainty. Logic and reason is a knowingness with certainty. But just because I'm not certain, and here's the difference. The knowingness without certainty doesn't mean I'm not certain it's going to happen. It means I don't need the certainty to prove it. I know this in the depth of my soul. Now, I'll give you an example. A few years ago, actually, it's been quite a few years ago now, since I moved to California, I was visiting friends in Northern California, and a friend of mine, Rosemary, has this beautiful bed and breakfast, and we were talking at breakfast one morning to a couple, and they were talking about how they packed up their VW Bug back in the 70s. They were hippies, in the early days, and they got in their VW Bug and they drove all the way to Mill Valley and started a new life, and they were now in their 60s and had been living here their whole life. And I was just at breakfast that morning, still living in Florida, but visiting friends in California. And I was 40, 42, so I was going through a midlife opportunity. I call it. It wasn't really a crisis, but it was an opportunity. I was ready for some change, some deep change in my life. And after hearing their story, I was walking back to my cabin, this beautiful, beautiful little meadow with, across the street was the Pacific Ocean, and the redwood forests were all around us, and my little cabin was nestled in the back, and I was walking from the main lodge where we had breakfast, and all of a sudden I just stopped. And it was so weird, but I just opened up my mind to the possibility, and I thought, I could live in California if I wanted to. I was like, duh. But I never really opened up the possibility. I've always loved California, but I was so conditioned. That was where my family, where I was raised in Florida. But when I opened up my mind to that possibility, this rush of energy came in where the hair stood up on the back of my neck. And I knew at that moment that I was connecting with my future self. I knew that I would be living in California. Without question, without certainty, but I knew it. Without the need for certainty, but I knew it. And then, of course, I'm walking back to the cabin and I get this idea that, wow, that would be really cool. Maybe I should live in California. And then, of course, my ego then jumps in and says, yeah, but you have a business, you have a home, you have a house back in Florida. All the reasons why not came up to try to talk me out of it. And I thought, okay, well, I'll give myself 5 years to, wrap things up in Florida and to move to California. But I knew it. It was a knowingness through my intuition from my soul without certainty, but it was there. And I've been willing to bet my life on it. Well, within a year and a half, everything fell into place back in Florida. The house got sold, everything worked together, and before you know it, I was living in California in a year and a half. But it was this knowingness, and I've been here for now 15 years. So that's an example of the knowingness without the need for certainty. You see, it's not that a knowingness without certainty is like, oh, I have a lot of doubt about it. No, intuition says, I know this is true. When you meet somebody and you just don't click and sync and you just feel there's something wrong, something's off kilter, you know it. But you can't prove it. You can't say what it is, but you can feel it. That's intuition. So anyways, those are some of the components that make up the anima and the animus within every human being, regardless of your gender. Regardless of your gender. And just switching gender doesn't make you more masculine or more feminine. Just changes your body. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to identify one way or the other, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But realize that's the illusion. The physical world is the illusion. And that's the second secret I want to talk about, is from the soul. When you look through the eyes of the soul, you will perceive not only intuition, creativity, passion, imagination, your potential, your power is in that feminine energy. And when you look through the eyes of the ego, it only can take in and understand through the 5 physical senses. 5 physical senses, not both hands. 5 physical senses, which is touch, taste, smell, hearing. So your ego's here to give you information, and you're supposed to listen and make choices and decisions based upon that. But if you only listen to that, the world will always deceive you. How long did it take for humanity to figure out that the world wasn't flat? Because the majority of people thought it was flat, but it took a few people who had insight and intuition and enough wherewithal and enough vulnerability to see the big picture, to listen to their soul, and then to change it for the entire world. Because the world obviously isn't flat. In the eyes of the ego, it's an illusion. It appears to be flat. It appears that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, but it's actually the earth rotating. You see? So if you just follow the physical illusion, and the soul, the secret of the soul is that it is the foundation of wisdom. And they've done studies, actually. They looked at the components of what makes up a wise person, and they compared it with intellect and spirituality. Looking at the components of what made up intellect, what makes up wisdom, and what makes up spirituality. And true wisdom is aligned with spirituality way far beyond anything of intellect. And yet we think of it as an intellectual thing. I got to be really super smart to be wise. No. You need to have a heart, and you have to have a connection to your soul. Your soul has the wisdom. You don't have to have superior intellect to be wise. So anyways, I just want to offer that little point. So it's important as you think about this, moving beyond struggle is masculine, feminine energy we talked about. So here we have these components. We have imagination and will. We have passion, compassion. We have creativity, productivity. I'm trying to do this with being as visual as I can. I usually have some visual backups, but this is hard on here. And then emotion or feeling and thinking, which is emotion. And then we have intuition and logic and reason. Now, when you wed and value, meaning to value these equally, to see the value of your thinking and your feeling, to see the value of your passion and your compassion, to see the value, to bring them together, guess what happens? When the soul and the spirit unite, when the masculine and feminine within you come together, they give birth. The two become one. They give birth to wholeness, to becoming whole. Now, what does that mean exactly? Do you remember we talked about the oneness? The oneness outside of time and space that divided into time and space to become the goddess and God? The oneness becomes two. Well, when you bring your soul and spirit, when you bring your feminine and masculine energy together, they give birth to wholeness, which is a reflection in physical world of the oneness outside of the physical world, of the oneness of time and space, outside of time and space. Wholeness is the oneness, the connection, and the power and the strength of being whole. Where I don't need somebody to be my other half. I don't need something out there separate from what's within me. And the power of feminine energy, when I take action upon it, becomes the strength, my inner strength of masculine energy. And it's kind of like, I like this analogy, I teach this many times, is think of a yellow sphere and a blue sphere, okay? The feminine energy, let's say, is yellow, the masculine energy is blue. I get those back and forth, it doesn't really matter which color they are. But when you bring them together, something third emerges, a synergy takes place of green, a third color. It's not a little yellow, a little blue, I'm a little masculine, a little feminine. No, a new energy comes forth called power and strength and peace, personal peace, a peace that you can't shake as easily or as quickly.